Welcome to the first ever Tech Stack podcast, your flagship podcast of AI hacking autonomously and everything else going on in tech worth talking about. I'm Theo and this is episode 1. Here's what the show is. Once a week I'm going to sit down and talk through the tech stories that actually matter. Not every single headline, just the ones worth understanding. No corporate press release voice, just me trying to figure out what's actually going on and why it matters out loud with you. Today we've got 5 stories, and honestly, they're a wild mix. We've got an AI that allegedly ran a cyber attack on its own, no human in the loop. We've got Microsoft cutting thousands of jobs out of Xbox. We've got Google finally telling us when the new Pixels are coming. It's not cheap news. We've got billions of dollars moving in ways that are honestly a little strange. And we've got a new budget phone from a company that's built its whole identity around see-through plastic and flashing functional but fun lights. So let's get into it. Okay, story number 1. And I'm putting this first because I think it's the one people are going to be talking about for a while. This week, security researchers reported on something called JadePuffer. That's the name given to an AI-driven attack. When an AI agent didn't just help a hacker, it ran the whole thing itself, planned it, adapted it as it went, executed a ransomware-style attack against real infrastructure independently. Let me explain why it's different from what we've heard before, because AI and hacking headlines are not new. For years, we've had this idea of AI as a tool. A hacker uses an AI to write better phishing emails or to help a vulnerability faster. A human is still in the driver's seat for the whole time, making decisions. What's different about this one is that the AI agent was reportedly chaining together known vulnerabilities on its own, figuring out step 1, then step 2, and then adapting based on what it found, into a complete extortion workflow without a person in directing each move. Think of it like the difference between a burglar using a lockpick versus a burglar who sends a robot that can pick locks. Figure out which room has valuables, avoid the guard dog, and get out. All without radioing back for instructions. The second thing is a fundamentally different threats model, because it doesn't need a skilled human anymore, it scales. You don't need 10 skilled hackers, you need one AI agent, and it can, in theory, run this against hundreds of targets at once. And I'll be honest, when I first read this, my gut reaction was, okay, this is overhyped. Because tech journalism loves an AI crossed a line headline. But even being skeptical about the framing, underlying fact pattern here, that's an agent chained together a multi-step attack adaptively. That's a real capability threshold, whether or not this specific case is exactly as dramatic as it's being described. Why this matters for regular people, not just security nerds: a lot of systems that keep things running, hospitals, water systems, small and big businesses, are protected by security teams that are already stretched thin. If attacks like this can be run without a skilled human on the other end, the volume of attacks a company might have to defend against could go up a lot, while the skill required to launch one goes down. For companies building AI tools, there's a framework mentioned here, Langflow. This is also a wake-up call about how AI development tools themselves need to be locked down, because attackers are now treating the AI agent framework as part of the attack surface, not just a tool sitting on the side. So this is where it leaves us. Security teams are now having to think about defending against attackers that don't sleep, don't need training, and don't make the kind of mistakes a rushed human hacker might make. That's the story. It's not robots are attacking us, it's the skill floor for sophisticated attacks just dropped. And that changes the maths for defenders everywhere. Alright, from AI doing something a little scary to something a lot more serious, but honestly maybe just as painful if you work at Microsoft. So Microsoft cut 4,800 jobs this week, and the headline that jumped out at me is that a lot of that is landing on the Xbox side. The gaming division is downsizing, and there's a plan floating around to spin off 4 different gaming studios. Let's sit with that for a second, because Microsoft's gaming business is not small. This is the company that spent almost $70 billion buying Activision Blizzard just a couple of years ago. So watching them turn around and shrink the division is a real signal. Here's my read on why this is happening. It's not that the gaming stopped making money, and it's that right now every dollar of capital at these big tech companies are being pushed toward one place: AI infrastructure, data centers, chips, power. While a company like Microsoft is deciding where the next quarter's investment dollars go, gaming studios are competing against AI data centers for that money. And right now, AI is winning that internal argument almost everywhere. Spinning off studios is a pretty telling move too. When you spin off a studio instead of just closing it, this usually means that this thing has value. We just don't want it eating our balance sheet and our management attention anymore. It's less this failed and more this doesn't fit the story we're telling investors right now. And look, behind every one of these headlines is thousands of actual people who make video games for a living. Finding out their studio's future is uncertain. That's worth sitting with for a second before we move to the next stock price implication. This industry does a lot: boom, hire aggressively, bust, cut aggressively. It's the people who are making the games who ride the roller coaster every time. Broader trend to watch. I think we're going to see repeat across big tech divisions this year. Anything that isn't directly AI infrastructure or an AI product is going to face this same pressure. Why are we funding this instead of another data center? Gaming just happens to be the first and biggest at Microsoft specifically. Okay, from layoffs to something a little more fun. If you've been waiting for a new Pixel phones, Google finally told us when we're going to see them. Though I don't know if fun is the right word once you hear the price. Alright, phone people. This one's for you. Google sent out official press invites this week for the Made by Google event. That's the event where they announce new Pixel devices, and it's happening 12th of August in New York. What's expected? 4 phones: the regular Pixel 11, the Pixel 11 Pro, the Pro XL, and a Pixel 11 Pro Fold. Plus the Pixel Watch 5 is expected to show up too. The timing is a little unusual. It's an evening event, 6 p.m. Eastern Time in the US, which Google doesn't usually do. Feels a bit more like an Apple-style show than their usual afternoon reveal. Might mean they're doing something more produced this year. And here's a fun little detail. The invite itself already gave away a hint. It showed a shiny gold frame, which is basically confirmation that at least one Pixel 11 model is launching in a gold finish. Google's been pretty tight-lipped on leaks this cycle, so this is honestly one of the only things they've confirmed themselves rather than getting us from a leaker. My personal theory on this one, I think the gold colour is going to end up being a Pixel 11 Pro and Pro XL exclusive, not the regular Pixel 11. Traditionally, gold has been treated as a pro colourway across the industry. It's the fancier, more premium option. And if you look at the invite image, it only shows 2 gold phones, not 4, which lines up with being just the 2 Pro models rather than the whole lineup. But here's the part that actually matters if you're thinking about buying one. Leaked European pricing suggests roughly €100 price increase across the lineup. And the reason isn't Google's just charging for more of the same thing. It's that they're reportedly dropping the 128GB storage tier entirely. So the cheapest Pixel 11 will start at 256 gigs. And that pushes the entry price up, even if the price per gigabyte story is more complicated. That matters because the 128GB base model was the affordable entry point into the Pixel lineup. If that's gone, the effective starting price for anyone who wanted the basic phone just went up a real amount, not just a rounding error. My honest take, this fits a pattern we're seeing across the whole phone industry right now. There's apparently a memory chip shortage driven partly by AI infrastructure and AI infrastructure demand sucking up manufacturing capacity, and it's pushing prices up on regular consumer electronics. So even if you have zero interest in AI data centers, you might end up paying more for your next phone because of them. It's a weird kind of trickle-down effect that I don't think most people have connected yet. One more detail, this Pixel 11 event lands about a month before Apple's expected iPhone 18 event, and Samsung's got their own Unpacked event before both of them later in July. So we're heading into a pretty stacked few weeks of phone launches if that's your thing. Okay, speaking of huge amounts of money moving around, let's talk about what's happening with AI funding right now, because some of this is genuinely strange. This is the story that's a little more abstract, but I think it's actually the most important one long term, because it's about who ends up owning the AI industry, not just who builds the best model. First thing, OpenAI has reportedly proposed giving roughly 5% of the company to a US government-linked vehicle. And the model they're using as the comparison point is the Alaska Permanent Fund. Quick context on that, the Alaska Permanent Fund is this fund set up decades ago where Alaska takes a cut of oil revenue and every resident gets a check every year just for living there, because the oil is treated as a shared resource that belongs to everyone in the state, not just the oil companies. So the idea being floated is if AI is going to be this powerful economic force, similar to oil was for Alaska, maybe the public should get a direct financial stake in it instead of all the upside going purely to private shareholders and investors. Whether or not this actually happens, the way it's being described, and I'd treat this very much still as a proposal, not a done deal. The fact that it's being seriously discussed tells you something. It tells you that OpenAI and maybe the industry more broadly, is starting to treat itself less like just a tech company and more like a piece of national infrastructure, something closer to a utility or strategic asset than a regular startup. The second piece of this is that Anthropic, the company behind Claude, which funny enough helped me research and organise some of what I'm telling you right now, has opened early talks with Samsung Electronics about manufacturing a custom AI chip using Samsung's more advanced 2 nanometer manufacturing process. Why this matters? Basically, every major AI lab right now is trying to reduce how dependent they are on NVIDIA. NVIDIA makes the vast majority of specialized chips that AI models are trained and run on. And that gives NVIDIA enormous pricing power and creates a supply bottleneck. If NVIDIA can't make enough chips fast enough, that limits how fast every AI company can grow, no matter how much money they have. So you're seeing multiple companies, DeepSeek doing something similar on the inference side, and now Anthropic exploring this with Samsung, all trying to build their own path to chips, so they're not standing on the same line as everyone else waiting on NVIDIA. Here's the big picture way I'd sum it up, this whole segment. The AI race used to be entirely about who has the smartest model. It's shifting to about who controls the physical stuff underneath, the chips, the power, the data centers. Because you can have the best model in the world, but you can't get enough chips to run it at scale. None of that matters. This is infrastructure politics now, not just software competition. Alright, that was a heavy one. Let's close out with something a lot more fun. New phones from a company that's built its whole brand about looking cool. Last story, and this is a nice change of pace. Nothing, the London-based phone company known for see-through design and light strips on the back called the Glyph interface, held their launch event on July the 7th and announced two things: the Nothing Phone 4B and the Nothing Ear 3A earbuds. Fun fact, I actually watched this event. The Phone 4B is a new budget tier from Nothing. It sits below their existing Phone 4A. It's running a Snapdragon 6 Gen 4 chip, which is solid, not flagship, mid-range processor. And it's priced below than the 4A. What I think is actually the more interesting part to this story isn't the phone's spec sheet, it's why this phone exists at all. Nothing previously had a separate sub-brand called CMF that handled their budget devices. They cancelled that, and instead of just quietly having a cheaper phone, they folded the budget tier directly under the main Nothing brand with this new B series. My take on why this matters, it's a branding bet. Instead of saying, here's our cheap sub-brand for people who can't afford the real thing, they're saying the Nothing design and software experience is now accessible at every price point. No separate lesser brand needed. That's a confidence move. It says they think their core identity is strong enough to stretch across price tiers without compromising their company. But here's the theory I've got, and I think it actually explains a lot about Nothing as a company right now. I genuinely think Nothing wants to make a proper flagship phone, like a real, no compromises, top of the line device, to go head to head with the best out there. And I honestly think it'd be amazing if they did it. But I don't think they can right now. It's not about talent or design, it's about size. Nothing is a much smaller company than the likes of Apple, Samsung or Xiaomi. Those companies buy components, chips, RAM, displays in absolute massive bulk, which gets them huge discounts per unit. Nothing doesn't have that same scale, so they can't get those same bulk prices. And a layer on top of that, what we talked about earlier, this Ramageddon, the AI data center driven memory shortage is pushing component prices up across the whole industry. If you're a giant like Samsung, you can absorb that and shock a lot more easily because of your buying power and massive user base. If you're a smaller company like nothing, that same price spike hits you proportionately, so it's much harder. So my theory is nothing's actually really good at making budget and mid-range phones genuinely good, not just good for the price. Precisely because that's the lane where their smaller scale doesn't hurt them as much. But stepping up to build a true flagship at the moment, when RAM and component costs are spiking industry-wide, is a much riskier bet for a company their size than it is for the giants. So instead of a flagship that might be priced out of reach or squeeze their margins to nothing, they keep doubling down on what they can actually do well right now. They also launched the Ear 3A earbuds alongside it in the same event, and they're genuinely clever feature on these. If you squeeze both stems at the same time, it records a clip of whatever you're currently listening to, and it saves it in the Nothing X app, so you can go back to it with your friends. It's a nice little social hook, like a Shazam moment built right into the hardware. No extra app fumbling required. So, while big AI companies are fighting over chip supply chains and government equity stakes, nothing's out here trying to make a good-looking budget phone, which honestly, after that last segment, is kind of a relief to talk about. That's episode 1. If you made it this far, genuinely thank you. This means a lot for a first episode. If you want to hear more of these, follow the show wherever you're listening. And if you've got a friend who'd like this kind of breakdown, send it that way. That's honestly the biggest thing that helps a brand new show like this one. I'm Theo, and this has been the Tech Stack Podcast. If you would like to ask any questions or interested in being a sponsor, email the techstackpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll see you this next week. The Tech Stack Podcast is a Tech Stack production. This show is edited and hosted by Theo Galley-Tonks. This show is hosted on rss.com.